left, right.
I have to say there's a lot of things that I have learned to do in my life over the course of the years that I have that is no longer applicable today. So there's a list of skills that I possess that I can no longer use. And unfortunately, I'm just going to have to forget them and tell stories to my grandchildren years from now. They won't even know what technology I'm talking about. Ask a kid what a record player is. You tell them it's a big CD. A lot of kids don't even know what a CD is anymore. So good luck with that. So we got a series of skills that are outdated, that aren't used anymore. Enjoy this episode. If we miss anything, or you have any comments you want to share, some skills that you don't use anymore, throw it in the comments. I'd love to see them. And if you have not already, this is my plea to you to subscribe to this podcast. We do this for fun. We'd love to have you there with us in the future. So if you'd like to be there with us in the future, subscribe. I promise we won't bombard you with anything. We'll just be on that homepage on YouTube as you scroll through. That is the most we will bother you. And on that note, see you on the other end. This is SipTalk. Grab a drink and enjoy.
Where's this going?
Cheers.
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 All right, we are live. My name is Justin DiGiulio out of my basement in New Jersey, joined by James, the Boswell, philosopher, philanderer, philanthropist, philatelist. I don't know what he doesn't do with a PH, but he does it all. James, how's it hanging down there in sunny South Carolina?
It's about to be not so sunny Spain. Flying out tomorrow morning.
You are on the verge of vacation. Must feel pretty good. Are you packed?
No.
That's the way to travel.
I've got stuff kind of laid out on the bed you can't see. Like I've started the process of packing. Now for me, like I love flying, like traveling light. There was one time I was supposed to fly up to Albany and woke up in the morning. I knew I had a flight that morning, but I didn't remember what time. So I wake up and I'm bullshitting playing video games. And I think, I should really check and see what time my flight is. And like, oh, it's boarding now. I hadn't packed or anything.
And you did manage to make it on time, though. Am I correct?
Yeah, and so like, I'm like, all right, cool. Like, order an Uber real quick. And I was like, I have until the Uber arrives to pack for this trip.
See, I'm a last minute packer. I'm not that last minute. Usually.
I mean, that's too much for me, but it's I know it's possible. I can do it.
Usually, I pack the day before. The problem is also I don't like doing laundry, so there's that aspect also.
I did laundry today. I actually it lined up perfectly where like I was out of underwear today. I was like, that was just sweet. I was gonna do laundry anyways.
I'm glad that coincided well. Speaking of doing laundry, I wanted to let you know about the topic of this podcast. Did you check your mailbox today?
My physical mailbox?
Yeah.
No.
No? What do you mean? You don't check your mailbox every day?
No.
I had timed the postal system for the topic to get to you today on time, so you'd be able to read my letter and you'd come prepared.
Oh, well, you expected too much.
That was the best I had for a segue. Really lousy one, but that is a skill. I don't know if you're aware of it. Today's topic is outdated skills. So skills that were one time very prevalent that you needed to get through life, like mailing a letter, and we just don't use them anymore. And I dove into this Bored Panda article thinking, there'd be just a couple of them. And the article just kept going and going. And the thing is, I was laying in bed, reading on the iPad. I'd already taken a melatonin, so I didn't have much time, but I struggled through the melatonin, finished the article. And here we are today discussing the article. Those of you who are tuning in now, who caught this episode last week, we had a bar trivia question. We will get to that shortly. So those of you on the edge,
you should just remind them what the question is. So if people want to think about it for the next 20 or 30 minutes or something,
they're gonna have to wait. So if you missed the question, sorry folks, go back to the last episode, pause us, and catch back up. This requires a lot of work. You got to stay with us here. So outdated skills. Should we just jump into it from here?
Yeah. Most of this list was created by you. I think I came up with a few, but they're probably repeated in yours. So
That's why I actually made a note. Just skip to mine because all of yours are in there. It's not my list. I added some on my own, but this is vastly from the Board Panda article. By the way, what are you drinking down there?
I got a PBR. My pool team captain comes over on Saturdays usually to practice, and he usually brings like an 18 pack or a 24 pack of PBR. So in a way, I'm kind of a sponsored professional pool player. I provide him wins in exchange for beer.
I think that's great. I'm drinking beer on the new bar tap. I told you I installed this bar tap on my basement bar.
How did the installation go? Relatively painless?
Did I explain last week how I drilled through the refrigerator?
Yes.
Okay, well, I had to get another refrigerator, and the manufacturer did I tell you how the manufacturer told me where to drill?
Yeah, by also saying like we don't want you to do this, but if you were to do it,
Yeah, so he told me to drill through the top. There's no no freon lines through the top of the machine, so I drilled through the top, and I ruined it. So they actually gave me a rebate. I had to buy another refrigerator, and I actually peeled back the plastic interior with a razor blade, went through the insulation, found the freon lines, and drilled around them. So now I have a tap on the bar. There's two kegs. I'm
important
very
question.
proud of myself.
Important question. Which beers are in the kegs?
Well, I'm trying to find some crowd pleasers here, so I went with a very light beer and then a heavier seasonal beer. And I've been dialing in the CO2 because you have to get the right carbonation between the two beers. But I have Michelob Ultra, which is ultra. Bear in mind, you're a bit limited when it comes to buying kegs. It's not like you can go to the store and there's 70 different types of beer. There's like maybe 15 types of kegs that are available. Some you might have to order, maybe a dozen, and they also have the kegs from different countries and things have different taps to the keg. So I only have a certain
I didn't think
D-type
about
coupler.
that.
Yeah. So I got Michelob Ultra, and then I got a Sam Adams seasonal, and I'm quite pleased with it's Sam Adams Oktoberfest. So there you go, Raj. So I have my Michelob Ultra, and I got a nice glass of scotch just for good measure. This is not a full glass of scotch this time because it's a expensive scotch. So I'll be sipping both as we delve into the article. Outdated skills. So speaking of which, where we led with timing a letter. So a lot of people don't know how to address an envelope.
Really?
Yeah, I swear to God. See, I work in a real estate office, as you know. I work with a lot of younger people, not just younger people, and writing letters. So if you just get that blank envelope, people don't know where to put the address and where to put the return address and where to put the stamp. And I kid you not.
Man, that's so easy.
And then the other thing is also timing when that letter will arrive, right? I just mailed something to Albany and it was there within 2 days. If I mail something to South Carolina, my guess would probably be
4
3
or 5.
days. But yeah, maybe 4. But really also like when you're sending something to someone on their birthday, you want it to arrive not too early, not too late, at least the day of or the day before. So actually timing things by mail is a skill. And I don't think anyone thinks about that anymore. We don't often mail things from our mailbox to other people's mailbox. So, all right, that's one. You want to hit the next one on this list here? Starting at
The
the top,
first one on the
basically?
list.
Yeah.
So rewinding a cassette tape by hand, either like an audio cassette or a video. And I'll tell you, like whatever, like that's just because like that media just doesn't really exist anymore. But when the tape started to like get spit out of one of those things, it was just an unmitigated disaster. You'd be panicking.
And because you could potentially ruin your tape, you could snap the tape, and then you're really screwed.
Or even if it just gets like bends or crinkles in it, it might not play back
But
correctly in the future.
I actually, as you know, because you visited recently, have been building a little retro bar area, not like liquor bar, but like a kind of retro area in my basement where I have VHS tapes and some old wireless televisions and Walkman. And I have a VHS player amongst many VHS tapes that somebody just told me they just threw away a whole bunch from an apartment. I was like, dude, I've been buying these for like 10, 15 bucks a pop, these 80s VHSs on eBay. But I had this VHS, I put in the machine, and the machine ate it. I had to disassemble the VCR and recoup my tape and rewind the tape by hand, which is basically, it's simpler than you may imagine for those who are not familiar with VHS. There's just two dials and you have to wind them.
Yeah, the thing with the cassette tapes is you couldn't always get your fingers in them, so you'd have to use like a screwdriver or something.
Screwdriver, or for a audio cassette tape, you could use the back of a pencil with the eraser.
Oh yeah, that would work too.
That would work. All right, we'll get back to the electronics shortly. Are you familiar with shorthand?
I tried to teach it to myself a long time ago because I thought it was a cool idea.
It's
Like
a great idea. It's
it
very
seems
cool.
cool because you're like, I could just write so much faster, and like also shorthand, like proper shorthand, is completely inscrutable if you don't know how to read it. Like it's a completely different language, really.
So
And so,
so how would you describe? You and I know what short. I didn't actually know that you would know what it was. So you and I know what shorthand is. How would you describe it to someone? Remember, this is an audio
well,
platform as well. So
it's a written form of English, but you're distilling, depending on the word, you're like distilling several letters of a word into like one or two symbols that might be linked by some kind of a stroke, but it's all kind of phonetic based.
and it has a kind of cursive aspect because all
Oh yeah.
everything's connected. So it has this
Mhm.
real flow because the idea is you want to be able to, you can't write in print as fast as someone is speaking, and you can't write in cursive as fast as someone is speaking. I try, my handwriting is total shit. But the idea of shorthand is that you can dictate what someone is saying at a speed equivalent to how quickly they're speaking.
And
So
it's
you
kind
have,
of like a keyboard versus a court stenographer.
in what way?
Well, so like if you're typing on a keyboard, like it can be tough to type as fast as a conversation is going, but a court stenographer can keep up with that. Like the most people, even like good typists, will top out at around 100 words per minute, and that's a good typist.
That's very good. Yeah, I time myself once in a while. So
Yeah, because like I can usually do like 75 to 80 pretty decently, but if you ask me to go much more than that, I'm not going to be accurate. And so court stenographers can do like 180, 250,
that's
300.
insane. That's
And
insane.
but the thing
But
is,
they're getting,
there's only like 10 keys on it, and so it's like a combination of strokes. And the tape that reads out, like if you don't know how to read stenography, it's just a hash, like a mishmash of like letters and symbols that
oh,
they can read because it's in their language. But
I
like,
didn't know this. I didn't know
oh
this.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
so
Like it'll just be like QRLTT apostrophe, and you'll be like, I don't know what this is, but like if you give it to the stenographer, they're like, oh yeah, it's the witness said this, and
whatever QRL
yeah.
apostrophe. Yeah.
And so
Um,
like it's like going from a keyboard where you're typing at like 80 to 100 to a stenographer, and it's just writing versus shorthand. It's
yeah, you're not writing individual letters. You're writing effectively sounds, and they're connected. So you're not picking the pen up in between
yeah.
words
I
and
tried
sounds.
to learn it. I spent about a week trying to teach it to myself, and I gave up.
My mom knew it when I was a kid, and I remember stumbling across when I was a little bit older some paperwork, and I was just like, "Is this what's that Star Trek language called? Klingon?"
Maybe.
So I don't. Yeah, I was like, "What is this? It's not. It's not English. It's not Spanish. It is just strange and completely illegible from the unknowing
I
eye."
mean, I kind of wish I gave more of an effort on it because it's like a cool, useless skill.
It's a cool, useless skill that you could literally write in code to people.
Yeah,
Speaking of learning things, do you remember in school when you would get a textbook? And remember, the school didn't. If you destroyed your textbook, which students have a tendency to do,
propensity.
you may have to pay for that textbook. And since they use textbooks, I don't know how quickly they cycled through them now, but they used textbooks back then for 4 or 5 years or longer, maybe even a decade.
It
Hey,
was always cool to get the textbook and see which students had it before you.
oh, because you have to write your name in the textbook. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that. And there was probably, you think there was 10, a dozen spaces for students, depending on how long
Yeah, and I'd say the
people,
average was probably between like 3 and
six.
6.
Yeah. But what we would have to do, and they sold things to do this for you, but what we would have to do is wrap the textbooks. and you'd either buy a textbook cover, but that was,
Yeah, you could get like the Lycra ones.
I mean, you could spend real money on textbook covers. Now, I spent a lot of time in Staples over the years, having an office. I have not seen a textbook cover ever, only since I was a kid. But many people, especially if you didn't want to spend stupid money on a stupid thing, would wrap their textbooks in brown paper bags. For those of you who don't know what brown paper bags are, or maybe you do, but
I
they were
think
much
everybody
more.
knows what brown paper
But
bags are.
but they were but how did you just happen to have? Let me ask you a question. Do you have brown paper bags around your house?
Yes, tons
Do
of
you?
them.
Why? You shop at a grocery? Oh, because you're in a different state. In New York, bags are legal. You have to pay for bags, and they give you these kind of reusable,
So
recyclable.
Charleston, I don't know, a couple years ago, Charleston County outlawed plastic bags.
Mm.
So when you go to the grocery store here, everything's in paper bags. And the reason is because we're right on the coast, and we're just like, we don't want plastic waste going in the ocean,
The
whatever.
ocean, yeah, it's a good idea. But
Yeah.
you've supplemented with paper bags. New York has not done that. So I guess depending on where you're listening, you may not be familiar with how commonplace paper bags were back 3+ decades ago.
Yeah, it's funny because like they were like the thing that everybody used, then they disappeared, and now they're making a comeback again.
I like paper bags. Now the issue is the handles on the paper bags. Most
Oh
of the
no, no.
paper bags back then didn't have handles. Now they
Well,
do. They're
if you're
reinforced.
using handles on a paper bag, you're an idiot.
Well, otherwise you just kind of have to bear hug them.
No, you just hold it underneath.
But you can only hold one at a time. You can string 16 plastic bags. I used to make
Yeah,
my
just
goal
take
to make
they take more than one trip.
one trip from the trunk of the car to the kitchen, and I
Yeah,
think that's kind of
that's always to me
always
just
been
been
my
a
goal.
stupid self-imposed challenge.
It really is. But now, since I now you can't get bags in the grocery store, so you have to bring your own. Which I don't have the forethought to be like, it's Tuesday, 7 a.m. Let me grab some grocery bags because there's a chance I may stop at the grocery store on the way home.
Here's
And
what
also,
you do.
you keep them in your car. Yeah, I don't do that either. I know. So what ends up happening is I go to the grocery store. I just put everything in the cart. I go through the checkout. They put everything back in the cart, and then I bring everything up kind of by the vegetable, chokehold. All right, moving on. Moving on. Do you remember that time I called you from jail?
Yeah, that was a fun day.
Yeah, it was a fun evening. Actually, it was miserable, but it makes for a good story. Do you know how I called you?
I would assume you had to remember my phone number.
Yeah, I had to remember your phone number. And this was in the days where we had mobile phones. And I'm telling you, phone numbers are going out. I've been saying this for years. Nobody remembers phone numbers anymore.
Oh, I totally do.
Now you just click somebody's picture and the phone rings to them. Most people don't even make phone calls anyways. But you don't need a 10 or 11 digit or more number to reach someone, depending on the country. It's just all digital. So you had to remember phone numbers back in the day.
For the last 3 years, I've had a phone that didn't have a functional contacts list.
So you've had to manually dial.
Every single phone incoming call. Oh, I also didn't have a call log. So like there was no history
You couldn't go
whatsoever.
back and just click.
Oh no, not at all. So like and what was great is like if I had one missed call, it would show missed call of like whatever the number. If I had two missed calls, it would just say two missed calls, and I'd have no idea. Like I can't call anybody back. I have no idea who this was. So like I had to memorize phone numbers because I'd have to like know who was calling me based on the phone number.
So for the young people listening to us right now, in the old days when you didn't have a digital interface with your phone, meaning you could click things on a screen, basically, you just had a number of buttons on the phone, and those buttons had numbers, and you would have to dial the numbers in the correct order to reach the person you were looking for.
Hey, they still make phones that have buttons. I just bought one.
I know you did. I know. I'm proud of you for upgrading your phone.
This
Not
is the
that
only
proud of you
joke that I
because
have about it. It's made by a company called Unihertz. And so when asked about how fast is my phone, I'm just going to say one.
Fair enough. So next up from dialing people's phone numbers with a keypad, or even if you have a screen keypad, a physical keypad. Prior to that were rotary phones. Did you ever have a rotary phone?
I don't think we had. We might have actually had a
You
rotary
had to
phone in
have.
my house. I think we did.
So when we were talking in the car, and I was like, "Oh, I was going to start bringing some of these things up." What I recently bought, and that's like, "Oh, I can't go any further." I recently bought a phone in a box, and it looks like a little display box that you might find as on like somebody's coffee table or shelf. Inside, it's wooden and leather bound. This box, so it looks like a display box. Inside is a phone with a rotary dial, and I think it might have been featured in like James Bond. So I happened to find it on eBay and bid on it and won. I thought it was the coolest looking thing.
Yeah, and that's something that like boomers likes to flex on Gen Z is like they Gen Z makes fun of boomers for being terrible with the internet, and the boomers are just like, well, dial a phone number using this. Like,
It's I hadn't seen a rotary phone in a long time, and then a few years ago I happened to see one, and I couldn't figure out how to make it work.
really?
Yeah, it took me, and then you know what it was, and this is where it gets real fucked up. It was actually a button phone with a rotary dial over, and the rotary didn't move. You just pushed the button in the hole of the rotary.
Oh, that's stupid.
That was stupid, right? That was really. But I don't know that a rotary phone works anymore.
I don't know. Like, you know what? Hell on. Like, I mean, a true boomer move is to still even have a landline.
I have pulled so many landlines out of this house, out of the walls, out of the corners, out of the crevices and nooks and crannies of every room. I don't know. Every room at some point over the last 75 years in this house must have had multiple lines in it. I pulled them all out. Now that I have this phone, I'm like, shit, maybe I'm going to subscribe, see if it works. I have two phones because I accidentally bid on a few, didn't win them. And I didn't realize that the notifications I was getting from eBay was a second phone. So
Oh, oops.
I have two of these phones.
You know, I'm approaching the point where I will have lived more than half of my life without a landline.
Oh, yeah. It's a strange place we're going to the future.
I mean, landlines are. I see no reason to keep them. Like, if you're in an office, sure, have a landline. But like, why do you need a landline
Oh,
at
I had
home?
a landline. I still have probably half a dozen, maybe more, phones just sitting in different filing cabinet drawers in my basement.
But
From
like
the
having a
office.
landline for an office and having like a phone tree to reach various employees that work in an office, that still makes sense.
Yeah, it's faster than calling people on the phone. All right, next up, another piece of old hardware, the record player.
Those have made a huge comeback in the last 10
They
years.
have made a huge comeback. I have a record player in my 80s tribute wall, and I have some records. I've got a list of records that I want to buy, but those motherfuckers are not cheap. If you want to buy a record now,
Like 30 or $40.
at least, yeah, I've seen some for like fucking $49. So the thing is, these artists release their new music on record as well. I don't look, I will
I
tell
mean, at
you,
this point, if you're buying music, you're either buying it digitally or you're buying it in vinyl.
yeah, I mean, you're not buying it on CD, you're not buying it on tape.
No. You might
But
actually cassettes are starting to make a little bit of a comeback too.
I have some cassettes and I have a cassette player. I haven't had to rewind the audio cassettes yet. Um, but I took a like a month and a half and I had probably 30 to 40 home videos on the mini video cassette and I converted all of them to digital video because how I don't even know how to play these things unless you plug your
Oh, you would need a special VCR cartridge that loads that one in.
yeah, it's very complicated. So, but record players are coming back. Records are coming back. Um, I forgot, and I didn't. I grew up in the time of music just past record players. In the 80s, tapes were pretty prevalent. Record players were not. We had a record. My grandmother had a record player. My father had a record player. We didn't use it. Listening to a record, you don't get that much time listening to the music. The albums aren't that long, and then you have to flip it to get to the other side of the album. Thank you for your input there. Do you have a record player?
No.
You have a tape player?
Doubtful.
Do you have a CD player?
In my computer.
Oh, your computer has a CD player?
Yeah, it's got an optical drive.
Oh,
It does not get much use.
Nobody with a Mac for the last decade has had a CD player.
Yeah, the nice thing about PCs is that they're modular and that
You
there's
could get
there's
it.
no overlord dictating what kind of peripherals I can have in my PC. Like I can take things out, I can put things in, and it just works.
Let me ask a question. Just while we have a couple of listeners here on YouTube or wherever else they're listening, in the comments, let me know an outdated skill or outdated piece of technology that is just not used anymore that you grew up with or you're familiar with or you have now.
But
Raj said he bought a record for $60, and it's actually an authentic album from the '60s, which is pretty
yeah,
cool.
so I would say like using a CD is not really an outdated skill because it's pretty easy, but it's just outdated technology. But I do want to, I want to meet the person if we're gonna go back to VHS tapes. Um, and like you'd go to the video rental store and you'd rent a movie for the weekend, and like it would always be like "Be Kind, Rewind," and you'd have to rewind the cassette all the way back to the beginning before you returned it. And then like as VHS started to fade out, like you'd go and rent DVDs at the store. And there was some guy out there who invented the DVD rewinder, and I thought that was genius.
Seriously? Interesting. All right. Next up, and I guarantee there's some people that work in my office that probably couldn't figure this out just because of age, but an analog clock. So my watch is an analog clock. It's got a lot of other crap on here, but it's talking to me now.
Sasha says saving schoolwork on floppy disks and making mixtapes on blank CDs. Yo, burning CDs was so awesome back in the day.
Oh yeah, we skipped actually burning CDs. Burning CDs was a hell of a lot easier than making mixed tapes. Did you ever record
mixtapes
music?
were work.
Did you ever record songs off of the radio onto
Yeah.
a cassette tape? You had?
Yeah.
And you have to you've got it like the announcer's is going to say the song that's coming up, and you have to wait for the end of the commercial break, and you just sit there with like your finger hovering over the record button. Yeah.
Yep.
And then of course you got to wait for like when that song's about to end before the DJ starts talking back over the track.
Yep. And
right? Or the next.
You got to have a trigger finger for stop.
Right. Man, I if we weren't doing this episode, I probably could have lived another lifetime and not even remembered doing that. Raj said mixtapes were the ultimate gift for a girlfriend, better than flowers. Because flowers you can go to the store and get flowers in a heartbeat, but the work that it takes to putting together a mixed tape.
Jorge's asking what we're drinking tonight. So Justin's drinking a Mick Ultra. I'm drinking a PBR. And Sasha talks about making good money, at school, making mixtapes from LimeWire. And it's funny to me how like for a while that's how everybody got their music was peer-to-peer sharing.
Yeah.
Like LimeWire or
it went downhill. It went downhill pretty quick. I wonder if the rise of viruses on LimeWire and the other sharing sites were by malicious users, or actually, now that I think about it, maybe by some of the big record labels.
It's possible
posing as users.
Like the problems with peer-to-peer, like the peer-to-peer had a growing problem with viruses and just bad files, but it also coincided with the rise of streaming content where internet connections got up to speed where you could reliably stream music or videos without like buffering or lag. And so like now today I get 99% of my music from YouTube Music, and it works great.
I don't use YouTube Music, but I do
if you use Spotify or Pandora, whatever, like there's a ton of streaming options where you don't have to have your content stored locally, and it works really well. So why would I download all this stuff when I don't need to?
It's funny these days that we don't physically own some of these. Like back in the day, you physically own the tape, or you physically own the CD or the record.
Well, that's why vinyl's made such a big comeback, is because people want to have that tangible object to represent the purchase that they made.
Yeah, because your belongings are your identity.
Mm-hmm. The things you own end up owning you.
Thank you,
Tyler
Durden. So reading an analog clock, the hour hand, the minute hand, the second hand, and being able to read it quickly, like you just look at it and you can tell somebody what time it is.
I'll also go along with this. This is like being able to quickly read 24-hour time. Which is only relevant for half the day.
I put every digital clock that I have in what I call military time or international time.
Yeah.
even though it's just time. But I like it better. I like the element of math, the quick math that you have to
Well,
do on your feet. And I don't know if you've ever. This happened to me twice as a kid, where I came home from school, I took a nap, and then I woke up at like 7:50,
and it was
or
dark.
at whatever time. It was dark. It was fall time, and that's generally when you wake up in the morning and you got to be on the bus at 7:50 or 8 o'clock or whatever the time the bus came, and it was also a little twilighty, dark out, and I woke up twice, freaked out, ran around the house, jumped in the shower, and my mom's like, "Why are you yelling? What's the matter? What's the matter?" I'm like,
I'm
"I'm
late
late.
for
I'm late.
school.
I'm late." And she's like, "You're late for what do you mean school? What do you mean you're late? You don't have school until tomorrow."
I mean, that's the sign of a good nap, though, is if
That's
you
the
take
sign
a
of a
nap
great
and you have
nap.
no idea what time it is.
That's the sign of a great nap.
Sasha, we're getting to your comment in a
Yeah,
second.
we're almost to Sasha's comment. So analog clock, and then here's one, and we'll get to some other things similar to that soon. A sundial.
All
Do
right, I
you?
mean, if we're talking about outdated stuff, that one's really outdated.
It's not. What if you're outside and you
Yeah,
don't have
but
a phone on you? You got to figure out what time it is.
you're not going to set up a sundial. Right, if you want to talk outdated, that's capital O outdated.
I struggled reading a sundial like a few months ago.
You know,
I happened upon a sundial, and I just could not figure out how to read it. Did
um,
you had sundials when you were a kid in your yard or something, right? In your
no,
garden? No?
no, I didn't live in ancient Rome.
Sundials are pretty cool, I have to say. Um,
Real quick, let's hit the answer to last week's trivia since we're halfway through.
okay, fair enough. We are halfway through. Halfway through. Last week's bar trivia. What is the commonality between the words job, polish, and herb? Job, polish, and herb. What makes these three words special? Well, and you don't know the answer? You didn't figure it out?
No, I gave it some thought, and wasn't able to get there, so I'm interested.
Now, my hint was write them down.
I did that.
Now, what happened when I wrote them down is when I read them back to myself, I read it back as Polish, Polish. So Polish being you're from Poland, with a capital, herb, Herb, becomes the name Herb, and with a capital J, job becomes Job, as in the name. So if you capitalize the first letter, the pronunciation of the three words changes. Thoughts?
Uh, I don't know, because I was gonna say like all three of those can be can become proper nouns or something.
Oh yeah, that's
But
effectively
but
it.
then I was thinking, you know what? Like practically any word can become a proper noun because the
Ooh.
word because proper
Yeah.
noun basically encapsulates anything.
Well, look, I got a really cool trivia question this week. I think you're gonna dig it. I don't know if you're gonna get the answer. I know you're gonna get the answer, but I know you're a math guy, so so I think you'll be able to. You probably have to take notes when I give you this week's trivia question, but
42.
I think you'll get it. You could be close. I don't have the math in front of me. I only have the question. So next outdated, I guess we got to speed up. Next outdated piece of technology or skill, paper fortune tellers. Remember being in like not even
Oh
middle
yeah,
school. The like four. I never knew how to make one of those, by the way.
I learned how to make it once. I couldn't do it again.
But I will tell you, kids nowadays spend no time making paper airplanes or paper origami. They're just on their phone.
Making paper airplanes was just like the best way to screw around in class.
I've always been bad at making paper airplanes. I don't have the brain capacity for that much detail. Like there's a lot of things I'm good at doing, really good at doing, but they're broad skills. Making a great paper airplane, making origami, these are like I realize I'm pretty good woodworking. I can make things with wood, but I would be called a finish carpenter, a terrible finish carpenter, somebody who does like the fine details, dovetailing, things like this. I I can't. I don't have that attention to detail, and I do. I can look at it and say that's shit. A lot of the time, I look at my own work and go, that's shit.
Well, for some reason, I'm reminded of the time that we went candlepin bowling.
Bowling is an outdated skill.
Yeah, but
Canada bowling, which nobody does. I think maybe they do it in
it's only in the
Massachusetts or
Northeast,
Rhode
really.
Island or something. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's popular in like the New England, particularly. Like candlepin bowling, it's a much smaller ball. It's like a little bit larger than a softball, and the pins are are tall and skinny. And despite the ball being like really small, like it's hard to throw accurately. And I remember we went candlepin bowling, and you would try throwing it as hard as you could, which would just like decrease the amount of time it took for it to make it to the gutter. And your only solution to this problem was to try throwing it harder the next time.
I was just I remember being just so frustrated, just so goddamn frustrated. All right, next up, Sasha's comment
I
here.
don't. For some reason, I'm drawing a parallel between that and your like ability to do finished carpentry.
No, everything would be. You got to see this bar. I'll send you a picture of the bar. The bar actually looks. Jorge, I
And
think, is still
hopefully, I'll
watching
see
the
it for
podcast.
myself at some point soon.
The bar looks real slick.
All right, next one, hitting
Next up,
Sasha's.
cursive handwriting. So writing cursive, but also I didn't realize. So I know people have a difficulty nowadays writing cursive. People also have a difficulty reading cursive.
I don't think reading it's all that difficult. Writing's a pain in the ass. I hate writing in
I
cursive.
work with a lot of. I mean, my handwriting is terrible. So like changing my handwriting, even to make it look nicer in print, is impossible for me. So just writing in cursive also.
Well, I think the reason why people have a problem reading cursive is that most people that write in cursive write in shitty cursive.
Well, they just write. They're writing fast. Yeah, it's usually they're connecting their letters.
Yeah, but like if you look at like properly written cursive, it's pretty easy to read and it's actually pleasant to look at.
Oh,
It's just that most people that are writing in cursive to this day write in shitty cursive.
dude. Speaking of that rotary phone that I got, the handwriting on the box, the person wrote in a Sharpie marker. The handwriting. I didn't take a picture of it. Maybe I'll dig it out of my recycling bin. But it was some of the nicest cursive I've seen in a long time.
Well,
Next up,
then
because
you're
we're not even
you're probably crossing the line into calligraphy at that point.
potentially, but I think some people just write like that all the time. And we got to speed up. We're not even a third of the way through this list. Sewing and stitching. Have you sewn or stitched anything lately?
Not recently, but I've done it before.
There is a skill to it. I recently added a leather steering wheel cover, and you can go to like AutoZone or probably even like Walmart auto section and get like a steering wheel cover that like slips on. Those are kind of like, I mean, if your steering wheel's chewed up, that's an upgrade. I had the pickup truck that I had that was old and beat up. I put one of those on, courtesy of my sister.
Yo,
Very
those
nice.
slip-on ones are dangerous though.
If they're not super tight. And the thing is, the key is you get one that's a little too small. You go out on a really hot day, sew it on, not sew it on, and slip it on. What I did was I got a piece of leather, went out in a really hot day, sat in the car with the top up, where it was really hot in that car, and I stretched the leather over the steering wheel, and then had to manually stitch the leather steering wheel back together. And I would consider that a skill. It was definitely not easy, and there's a specific pattern you had to stick to. Next up, basic board games. Do you know how to play basic board games?
Define basic.
Basic Scrabble,
Yep.
Monopoly,
Yep.
backgammon,
Yep.
Sorry, Shoots and Ladders,
Yep.
the
Yep. I
Game
mean,
of
if you don't know
Life.
how to play shoots and ladders, you really need to go back
I
to
mean,
kindergarten.
most of these games come with instructions, but there's a certain element of just my sister's always bringing up new games, and I don't have my brain. It just doesn't have the space in it to stay on top of these things. I am very bad at remembering how to play these simple games. All right, next up is making change at the till. So your food costs $14.56, and you give them a 20. What should they give you?
$4.44. No, $5.44.
And how do you break that down in change? There's not a 44-cent token.
What?
So you give them a $5 bill.
Yeah,
Two
and then
quarters.
it was 440, 546. You're not
Okay,
giving them two
all right.
quarters.
Sorry.
You're giving them 1 quarter, 2 dimes, and a penny.
There you go. That's so most new cash registers tell people what to how much change to give back, right, and in what denomination. But for the most part, and for the most
Really?
part,
They'll say like the actual coins that you need to give back, not just like the total.
well, there's some cash registers that actually spit the coins out,
Well, yeah.
right? Like cashier doesn't actually even have to touch the coins,
No, they'll
but a
just give you
lot
the
of them.
bills and the coins come out.
This is pretty cool. You have the change drawer that pops out, and then the screen is above it, and it lights up over the bill stack that you're, and it will say 2 of this bill stack, 1 of this bill stack. Is really crazy.
So that brings me to a concept I like to call idiot proofing.
uh,
Because at some point, like somebody said, you know what, we need to invest the money in this system because our idiot cashiers are costing us so much money by giving out wrong change. Which
and
brings like, hold on, this is part of my tight 5.
all right, but we're not even halfway.
Yeah, but
We got to
like
speed up here.
I love the phrase idiot proofing because it makes me think that there's some facility where they test these products. And I can only imagine like this facility exists like in the swamps of Florida, this cold industrial building that completely clashes with the surrounding landscape. And in this facility, there's this giant room with like one huge fluorescent light over like a basic metal table where they place the object that they're trying to idiot proof on,
In
and they
front of
just
the
put it
idiot.
there, and then there's a loud PA that comes over and says, "Okay, send in the idiots." And if this thing survives, it's now idiot proof.
All right. Next up, the Dewey Decimal System. I thought about this one when I threw it on there. I mean, I remember the Dewey Decimal System. I couldn't put my finger on exactly how it works. I
Well,
couldn't
it's
explain it to myself. I think it was by author,
no, it's by
um,
subject.
by subject, then by author.
No,
No, and then I'm fucking wrong.
subject, and then by like sub-subject. And so like I don't remember which one it is, but like it goes from 1 to 999. And so like let's say in the 200s, let's just imagine that is some kind of science, let's say biology. And so like 240 might be like microbiology, and so like 241 might be some form, like some subsection of microbiology. So
And all
like
those books.
200 is biology, 240 is microbiology, 242 is bacteria, 243 is viruses. I don't know,
Yeah,
but
no,
it
yeah.
goes kind of like that.
All right. Next up, addressing envelope, writing a check. So there's 2 parts to this. I see clients of mine and agents unable to write a check.
When was the last time you wrote a check?
I write them all the time.
Oh,
There were days I was writing a couple dozen checks.
I don't write checks
But then
ever.
also
I used to.
when you get a check. So I see somebody write a check and they go to turn it over and to start signing on the back. The signature on the back is what's supposed to be endorsed by the recipient of the check. And when a check is signed on the back, it is as good as cash.
Which
And
is why you're
endorsed,
supposed to only sign it once you're at the bank.
exactly. Yeah, you are supposed to only sign because if you sign it beforehand and lose it, say you got a check for 10 grand, you take it to the bank, you've already signed the back and it slips out of your wallet. Somebody picks up a check that's signed on the back. That is effectively cash.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on just for the sake of time because we got a lot to cover.
All right, here's one we both came up with.
This is one we both came up with. Go for it.
Driving a manual transmission.
Driving a manual transmission, which we were driving home. We were talking about the difference between owning a used car and a new car, and I was about to say the thing is, you and I are more inclined to buy a used car so that we can buy a car with a manual transmission because they don't make them anymore. They make them.
There's very few manufacturers that still make
They
manual
make
transmissions.
a couple of them now, but
Mazda and Subaru, I know are. Toyota still is.
look, as we transition to electric vehicles, there'll be
Toyota's coming up with an electric vehicle that they're going to have a clutch on.
I'm not a huge Toyota fan, but I would definitely give that a little test drive.
Yeah, I think it's like a digital thing, but basically they're putting a third pedal in there so that people can feel like they're shifting gears.
It's kind of just like the paddle shifting isn't really shifting. There's no clutch.
In some cars it is. In some cars it legit is, but most cars it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
Like really, the only cars that are going to have like true paddle shifting are going to be the very high end sports cars.
So the popping of the clutch, this is the other aspect. So if you are in a automatic transmission car, your battery's dead or something, you're kind of screwed. You got to get another car there. You got to get jumper cables,
or towed.
or you got to get towed away. Now, if you have a manual transmission car, what you can do is so there's 3 pedals. That third pedal is the clutch. When that clutch is fully depressed, the wheels and the engine are disconnected. Okay. Now, what you can do is you can get the car rolling. So the wheels of the car are rolling. And then when you pop the clutch, you basically drop your foot off it and it pops up quickly.
Well, you want to do it gradually. You don't want to dump the clutch.
The clutch is what connects the tires and the wheels to the engine. So when you release that clutch, the engine and the wheels will start to connect. And the idea is that the wheels.
Well, you're gonna have kinetic energy from the car moving and in the wheels that gets translated through the transmission to the engine.
Well, you basically have a plate of one thing is spinning, the other thing is not, and then they come together and it gets the engine spinning. And it's easier to do on a hill. It's easy. It's a little tougher when somebody's pushing you.
It's really tough to do if you've got people physically pushing you from behind.
I've spent so many times with a motorcycle, with the old 911, the first one I had, running through Brooklyn. I remember this one time it used to die because I had a new, what do you call it, receiver and audio system put in, used to kill the battery. And I remember running behind. I remember being on a date and being like, she can't push the car. Running behind the car, pushing it myself, running alongside the car, the door open, trying to jump in the car and pop the clutch.
Did it work?
It did work after a while. Although at one
point, I'm impressed because like
at one point I got so fucking mad. I punched the car and the top was down, so I punched where the soft top was, and it fucking broke something within the mechanism that like put the top up.
Good job.
Fucking top. Oh, it was so bad. I hated that car and I loved it so much.
Yeah. But popping the clutch is so useful. I've had a couple times where a battery has died and I've driven home, and the way that I've assessed whether the car will restart is like I'm going at like 50 miles an hour or something. I was like, okay, I'm gonna shut off the engine, turn it back to the on position, and then like put it in 5th gear and see if and then actually while I'm still rolling at 50 miles an hour, see if the engine will turn over on its own. And if it won't, then I just throw it into 5th and pop the clutch and get the engine going again. But that's my way of testing to say like, hey, if I stop and I have to like restart the engine, will it go? But I've got the backup strategy of popping the clutch.
So look, the only issue with that is when you turn that key, you're off to the off position, your wheel lock goes on. And I have locked the wheel by turning the ignition off at a high speed before.
No, I don't turn it all the way to the wheel lock position.
All right. Nobody knows what we're talking about. Only you and I know.
Oh yeah, this is cars that actually have keys.
Next up, developing film. That used to be something people did manually.
I don't know how to do
next up after that is navigating via map.
Everybody uses the Jeeps now.
Everybody uses GPS. Sometimes people don't even look at it; they're just told where to go.
Yeah, I hate
that. Next up is refolding the giant map. That was an actual skill because a lot of people sucked at it. After that,
thankfully, there's a backup strategy for that.
What, crumpling it up? Yeah. Next up is refolding a newspaper. Refolding a newspaper can be challenging.
Same strategy with the newspaper.
Next up, basic computer programming. So programming in BASIC. That's one.
Yeah, I would say like I've learned a good bit about programming just from using Excel and having to come up with ways of getting data out of it.
Yeah, but next up also is DOS.
Oh, DOS prompt is huge.
DOS prompt. I encounter every once in a while. I have to reuse it. I as a child, I was actually I could make things happen. Now, if I was just faced to a black screen with a green print, I would have no idea. Rosh is saying how we both had a job that the computers were in.
Yeah, I know how to navigate a file tree in DOS, and that's about it in terms of like change directory.
I would need a cheat sheet. I need a cheat sheet. Next up is tuning an antenna. So you're listening to the radio.
An old car radio?
Listening to a radio, or you're listening or watching a TV, and you have the actual antenna, right? And you got to move the antenna. You gotta
Oh, you gotta
all these
wrap it with
tricks you could do
tinfoil
with
too.
tin foil. We used to go to my friend George's house, and he had a soda can attached to the end of his coaxial cable, which is his impromptu antenna. All right, back onto the automotive. Changing oil was something a lot of people used to do by themselves. Nobody does it anymore.
Well, to be fair, a lot of manufacturers have made it much more difficult to change your own oil now.
And honestly, I don't think it's that. It's just getting to the oil filter. That's it. Usually the drain plug's right on the bottom of the car.
Right, but there
But,
are some cars where it's legitimately more difficult than
well,
it used to.
here's the next part. All right. Also, changing a flat tire. A lot of people have tough time with. But also, let's take it a little bit deeper. Changing the belts, changing the alternator, changing the starter, doing any actual mechanic. So I have a slight coolant leak in the 911. My 911 is not a new Porsche. It's a little older, but I can't get to the source of the leak because in that engine everything is very compact. In most new cars now, everything is really compact. There's so many electronics within the engine that everything has sensors on it. Everything has a electronic control
When
that it,
everything's also wrapped in needless plastic guards and
well,
stuff that
they put all these shrouds over it, so like it just doesn't make any sense. And then you got to like unbolt everything. It's a waste of time. Next on the list, speaking of driving, I used to have to drive and do this. I felt like it was easier with the physical keyboard. Texting
hey,
texting in T9. Well, now you have a QWERTY keyboard on your phone,
yeah,
but
but
texting in T9. This is when the keyboard of your phone only had 1 through 9 plus 0 asterisk and pound
and maybe
sign.
like 4 or 5 other buttons.
And
But
to type the letter C,
you'd
you
have to
would
hit
press
1
1
3
3
times.
times, right? So if you wanted to say cops, you'd have to type 111
5 5.
5555. All right.
No, it would be N and O or
555 wait, 555 wait, 5555.
no, no, no. 5 3 times. It would be
Well,
1
5 3
1
times for P.
5 5 wait 5 5 5 and then 7 7
So if you have no
7.
idea, what the fuck we're talking about right now, this is why it was a true art, and which is why nobody fucking does it
Well, but like
anymore.
when you got good at it, you could like it was just secondhand. And then like when the predictive text came out, like it was even better because you would like and you could also start to learn like what predictive text was going to do and be able to just like type with
Uh,
one hand without
yeah.
even looking.
Well, the nice thing was you had a physical keyboard, so you could feel the buttons, and
Yeah.
you knew what the phone was going to do. But of course,
People shit on me all the time for my refusal to buy a phone that's touchscreen only, and here you are talking about how great physical keyboards are.
look, when I type on a touchscreen phone, I don't look at the phone. I don't look at the phone. Just like when I type on a keyboard, I don't look at the keyboard. A lot of people like are constantly checking it and looking.
You want to
Uh,
see me get irrationally angry? Ask me to write an email on a touchscreen only phone.
yeah, no way, no way.
I will
All
lose
right,
my shit.
I'm gonna share this week's bar trivia. Now, again, if you know the answer this week, don't shout it out. I do ask that you don't Google the answer. Now, you're all welcome to Google the answer. All right. But I would advise you to make this fun and challenging for yourself and to really be in the moment, real hygge type experience. Don't Google it. Just wait for the answer. If you know the answer, you send it to me in an email or a text. All right. If you have my number. If you don't, you can just find me online, shoot me a DM. Uh, this is a cool one. I think you're gonna like this one, James. And this is good, especially if you're into like geometry or math.
All right, fire it off.
If you have a green thumb, if you like to garden, this could be useful, especially if you spend a lot of time at Home Depot. But here's the question. It's a simple question. So you're working in the garden. You want to plant a tree. So you dig a hole. Now, this is where your math skills really come into play. The hole is 2 feet by 3 feet. Okay, so 24 inches by 36 inches.
Okay.
Okay, and it is 36 inches deep.
Okay.
Okay, now I'm not going to ask you for the answer on the air. All right, my question to you is how much dirt is in the hole? So say you're doing some work in the garden. You got to make a Home Depot run or whatever it is. And this is if you're into math or you already
So
do
is
some
this like
gardening.
how many cubic feet?
Well, I mean,
How many
realistically,
cubic feet do you need to fill the hole?
James, say no more. The question is that this hole is 2 feet by 3 feet wide,
And 3
and
feet deep.
it is 3 feet deep. Uh, I just ask that you keep your potential answers to yourself until after this episode. But my question is, how much dirt is in this hole? All right. So, should I repeat it? Should I repeat it one more time, or
No,
you think you got it?
YouTube has playback.
YouTube does have playback, so you can always rewind, listen to that question again,
You see
unless
my
you're
answer in the private chat?
yes. It's wrong, but
No,
close.
it's correct.
You're
It's
yeah,
technically correct.
you're you get the right idea. Um, Only someone with your background. I'll explain just quick off air. All right. The last couple were missing. We had burning CDs. We had recording on a cassette to make mixtapes. When you were playing a video game, or you were using your VCR and you had to tune the television to channel 3 or 4
Yep.
in order to get the playthrough through that VCR or video game. We hit DOS commands. Uh, 2 last ones. Now I don't think these are that outdated, but I'll tell you why they are. The NATO alphabet.
How many of them do you know?
I probably know them all. You want me to run? So here, and let me. I'll run through them if you want to.
Alpha, Bravo,
Hang on.
Charlie.
Hold on. Here's the issue: is that a lot of people. I talk on the phone a lot of times. I make these phone calls. People give me. They're like, "Oh, here's the serial code or the tracking code," and a lot of people I think don't understand that there is an actual alphabet that is used professionally, internationally. You don't make up. So if I'm like, "Hey, my last name is Green," that's G for groovy.
G is in green.
R as in Rufio. E as in edibles. E as in edamame. N as in Nigeria, and E as in emperor. No, they're actual words that correspond. That is an international language. Alpha.
Sasha says asking someone older to buy you booze might be outdated.
Asking someone
I mean,
older.
I don't know. There's probably there's
Is
lots of hot chicks that'll do that.
it's outdated if you're over 21.
It's out not if you're a smoking hot 23-year-old chick in a bar full of 45-year-old dudes.
They don't even have to be that old.
Yeah, but
So, but the NATO alphabet: Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta,
Echo,
yeah, Delta, Echo,
Foxtrot.
Fox. Yeah, I can't. The problem is I can't think the alphabet while I think of the fucking letters. Foxtrot, Golf, Hotel. Can you just give me the letters? I'll give you the word.
I,
India.
J,
Fuck me. Juliet.
K,
Kilo, Lima, Mike, November, Oscar, Papa, Quebec, Romeo. Oh, damn. Why am I drawing a blank? Maybe because
I don't know. I only knew up through Foxtrot.
really?
Yeah.
T is Tango, uniform, Victor, whiskey,
X-ray,
X-ray,
Zulu.
yeah, but what's Y? I was gonna say Yankee,
Oh yeah,
Zulu.
Yankee.
They're all up
Zulu.
here. I don't. The thing is, I always shut them on the phone. People think like, oh, what's this guy in the military? No, I just know what the fucking letters are. For whatever reason, now that we just called them out live, I feel like an idiot.
Yeah, whiskey Tango Foxtrot.
Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Yeah.
All right, last one. Keyboard shortcuts: Control C, Control V, Control A, Control P, Control O, Control S.
Dude, I spend so much time working with real estate agents, and I'm like, all right, just open a new tab.
Control Z.
Google this. Go to your Gmail, and like to open a new tab, they open Google Chrome, and then they click new tab, and then they go to google.com and then they type Gmail. They don't go to gmail.com, but they search Gmail. Then they click the link. It's just like Control N, Control T, GM, enter, right? Like
How
that.
many
It's a couple of keystrokes.
how many keyboard shortcuts would you say you use in an average working day?
I don't know, 12. Like again, my
And
my
I'm
brain, my brain.
talking frequency of use. Like, how many times do you use one over the course of
Oh,
it?
I all day, like literally all day long.
Same here. It's like
It's the minimum. So the idea with
like
shortcuts, right?
hundreds of times.
The idea with shortcuts is you are moving your fingers and your hands as little as possible. If you don't have to take your hands off the keyboard to the mouse to click something, if you have to bring your hand from the mouse to the keyboard, you're saving yourself time. And it's just silly to spend useless time doing silly, useless things. All right,
Back when I was in the accounting office,
we
what
got
like
we got
one of the
20
no,
seconds.
real quick, one of the partners was over my shoulder, and I was like, and I was trying to demo like some financials or whatever, and I'm just doing a whole bunch of keyboard shortcuts to move across the Excel and stuff. He's like, "How did you do that?"
It is magic. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, on any audio podcast platform. Search us SipTalk or Justin DiGiulio. And don't forget to buy my book. Search Justin DiGiulio on Amazon. Thank you guys for joining us. Adios. All right, thanks for joining. Did we miss any skills that you know of that are now outdated? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Adios.
I like PBR. I just got priced out of it.